Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome back to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and as I was prepping for today's episode, I was thinking about this reoccurring theme that just keeps showing up. The idea that a lot of us have spent years building a life that, on paper, looks like it's working. We're capable, we've done the things, all the things we're supposed to do, and from the outside, it looks pretty solid. And still, for many of us, in spite of all that, there's this feeling that something's not quite right, not fully aligned or missing. Not in a dramatic way, not like everything's falling apart, just somehow off or not complete. And based on hundreds of conversations I've now had on the show and my own experience, I don't think most of us feel that in our 20s or our 30s. I think it shows up later when we've built enough to realize that being successful and feeling clear and aligned aren't the same thing, and that being busy doesn't automatically mean you're moving forward or focused on the right things, and that constantly pushing might actually be part of what's keeping us stuck. Joining me for today to talk about all of those things is Crystal Bell. Crystal brings a perspective that so many of you will recognize. Her career has taken her across education, nonprofit, and government work into executive leadership in tech, and now into entrepreneurship in her 40s as the founder of Clarity with Crystal and the co-owner of a yoga and wellness studio. She also serves as a president of enterprise solutions at a technology company, which gives her a unique lens into what it looks like to navigate both high-level leadership and deeply personal transformation at the same time. But what makes her work especially powerful is that it's grounded in lived experience. Crystal grew up in low-income and unstable environment where she learned early on to cope through perfectionism and overachievement. Those patterns helped her build a successful career, but they also created a constant sense that more was always required. That pressure eventually led her into deeper personal work, and today it shapes how she approaches leadership, growth, and decision-making. Crystal, glad to have you with me today. I can't wait to talk about all of these things, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a beautiful intro. I'm like, yes, that's so true.
Tell me more.
Tell me more about her.
Well, we all feel so unique, but really in reality, we all have a lot of the same things in common. That's the more I talk to people, that's the more I realize that that is a true statement. I would love to start us out by touching on something that I mentioned, and that's the environment that you grew up in and what that was like and how that led you to feel like you always had to be perfect and overachieve.
Yeah.
Set the stage.
Yes. So you might notice by my accent, which is a little bit different than yours. I grew up in the Midwest, and I was in a low-income family and had the opportunity, though, to go to a gifted and talented elementary and middle school. But my immediate family, I joke with my therapist regularly about how we cover the entire DSM-5, right? Like alcoholism, verbal abuse, physical violence, addiction, mental illness. We go anywhere from schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, depressive, suicidal ideation. It's like kind of the whole gambit. I was lucky enough to get out of it with just a little bit of complex PTSD and anxiety, which, I think is also a common theme with millennials and Gen X these days because of these extreme kind of long-term traumas that we experience as we were children. If you've read anything or know about the ACE score, which is the Adverse Childhood Trauma score, it's a scale of 1 to 10 of they ask you like specific questions to these 10 questions. And every time you say yes to one, that's like a particular traumatic experience that happened as you were a child that impacts your development. It impacts kind of the way that you behave. And a lot of outcomes are associated with that. Mine is an 8 out of 10, which
Mm,
is very high,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But what I believe truly in my heart that what has helped me through was that I had all of these examples that I was looking at. And in my life, my inner monologue at the time when I was growing up was, okay, that's not working. So what else could I do? And I would see, my step siblings being in trouble, my sister struggling with drug addiction and constantly being in a relationship. Her boyfriends lived with us from the time she was 16, right? One of my stepbrothers has 11 children with many different women, right? So there was just a lot of different things that I experienced as a child that helped me to set a foundation of what didn't work.
Mm,
The problem was, though, as I was growing up, because there was so much chaos growing on all around me, my mom was struggling with long term depression and alcohol abuse. My stepfather was an alcoholic as well. I had to find a way to get some kind of attention, right?
yeah.
And so that led to the perfectionism and overachievement because the screwing up wasn't working for them. I mean, they were getting attention, but I didn't think it seemed no, it wasn't great. So instead, I went the opposite route, right? Straight A's, as many clubs as I could join. I was in choir, I was in band, I was in drama, I was in National Honor Society. And everything that I did was one, a coping mechanism, right? I
Yeah.
didn't realize how much it was actually helping me to handle the things that were going on at home. But also, I didn't realize until much later, but I was physically putting myself on a stage because that was the only time that I was getting time and attention
Mm,
from the family in a positive way. And so I learned through that process that if you overachieve, if you control yourself, if you try to control everything around you, if you show up perfect, if you try to make everybody else happy, then you can get this kind of set of positive attention. And that led to really a spiral of perfectionism and overachievement. I would say I call myself a recovering perfectionist.
me too.
Yeah, so hands up for that. And as far as overachievement, I mean, I'm honest. I mean, you read my bio, so maybe I'm still there. But working on saying no, working on setting appropriate boundaries. Still, that's a work in progress.
Well, it's funny. We kind of joke, but it's also the truth is it's hard to shed that when it's been the way you operate your whole life. And to your point, it served a purpose for a long, long, long time. In fact, you could make the argument that it actually served you well as an adult also, because on paper, and I'm using air quotes, but on paper, all those achievements that you have certainly did not suffer from your perfectionism and did not suffer from your overachievement. I mean, they certainly contributed to you gaining all that success. So the thing that I'm always curious about is, when did you realize that it was hurting you or penalizing you more than it was actually helping you?
The first time I realized it, this was really the biggest wake up call, was I was in graduate school pursuing two different master's degrees at the same time
Of
because
course.
overachiever,
Of
perfectionist,
course.
right?
Yeah.
And it was the summer between the first and second year. And I had an internship. So I'd go to the internship, I would come home and I would lay in bed and I would sleep and I wouldn't leave my room. And I did that for, I'm going to say it was at least 2 straight weeks, right? Like this was summer vacation after the hardest year of education of my life. And I did nothing. I had zero energy. I had zero like ability to do anything except for show up to work because of course I had to do that.
Yeah.
And I started to ask myself, like, this isn't like me, right? Like, I'm very social, I'm personable, I like activities, I like to be outside. And I couldn't bring myself to do anything. And so I said, okay, I think that I need to get help. I think I need to go to therapy. And so I started, that was in 2009. And so I have been in therapy ever since, seeking, I've gone through different therapists. I've been with my current therapist for actually like I don't know, 13 years or something. But that was really the first time that I was like, wow, like something is wrong, because this is the first time in my life that I've experienced the ability to have rest, where like I don't have all these demands. My internship was not crazy intense. I have free time, and I physically and energetically and emotionally can't bring myself to do anything.
Mm.
What is that? That's not who I am, right? And so that was really the first of a series of, eventual wake up calls over time that have shifted and adjusted over time while I've continued to heal.
So it's interesting that I think one of the things that we've been talking about is self-awareness is fabulous, right? I mean, you have to be self-aware to really dig in and do any of this personal development work. But the awareness isn't what really changes things. It's the starting point, I guess, right? So even when you just told that story, you talked about like you knew this wasn't you. You knew there was something off. You knew there was some. What was the thing that triggered you to actually take action? So even you said, it showed up a couple of times. So that tells me that you didn't quite get the lesson. You heard the whisper, then maybe got knocked over the head, but it keeps coming until you really learn the lesson. So what was the thing that got you to really shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're onions, right? Like, so that very first time being in bed, being in my room for 2 weeks, I was like, okay, I need to do something about this, right? So I went to therapy. But that was the beginning of the journey, right? And then there's been times where I've been feeling so alone. There was a time after graduate school, I was looking for jobs. I had just graduated. It was 2010. The market wasn't exactly fantastic for somebody who had two master's degrees again, like back to
Uh-huh.
that, looking for a job. I'm pretty sure I applied to 99 different jobs. Like I kept a
Wow.
spreadsheet because, of course I did. And I had just moved across the country. I had moved to Washington State after graduate school. I knew no one. And that was another turning point of like, I am on my own. There is no one that's coming to save me. And every once in a while something happens. Every few years, or a situation that would come up. Sometimes it's at work. If I realize I didn't handle that very well, oh, that's another layer of the onion, that like I've healed a lot, but now I'm back to this pattern, right? Because I do think that, especially, I guess specifically for me because of the complex PTSD, but with everybody, as we're healing and unwinding our childhood, and as we're healing and unwinding our own psyche, we're learning and we're adjusting for that particular situation, right? So after talk therapy, I began to, understand my triggers and engage, and allowed that, said, okay, rest is okay, but what does that really mean? Right. And now in my much more healed state, I can recognize when I am beginning to burn out, what the signs are on my calendar, what the signs are in my sleep patterns, what is happening that my body and my mind are beginning to trigger, like, something's not quite right. Like maybe I'm really irritable.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't show up very well in leadership, and I get really short with my team, which is again not the way that I lead. And those are all just little signs that I would have never known if I went to
Yeah.
therapy for this
Yeah.
long, right? But again, just layers of a deeper onion of like, hey, what's that about? It's rubbing up against me. How do I explore that? And thankfully now I have, a lot more tools that I can use to deal with them and unpack. I think that we're all works in progress.
I do too.
And as much as I've learned, it's a set of tools that I happen to know and want to share with other people, rather than, some sort of magical wand that I've found for everybody. But
I also think the work just continues and it
yeah.
just keeps evolving. You have a business, Clarity with Crystal, and I guess I'm curious what clarity really looks like in your own life today. So less theoretical, but what does it actually feel like day to day?
So thinking about being in my midlife, understanding that the path that I thought that I was on, right, which originally you mentioned, I thought I was going to be a music teacher. I thought from the time I was in kindergarten, I was going to be a teacher until I graduated from college and decided I wanted to go to graduate school, right? That entire part of my life, I thought I had clarity. I didn't, right? And then I was in this corporate journey, and, have been on this beautiful journey, and I wanted to climb the ladder. I wanted to become an executive. And now I'm here and I'm like, okay, check, right? So did
Yes.
that, but there's something else. Like there's a
Yeah.
bigger purpose inside me. And so the clarity has come of I have a gift. I have a gift, I believe, of being able to hear what people are saying and interpret it, and help them to understand what they are really meaning. Two people having a conversation, I can notice if they're not actually saying the same thing.
Mm,
When people are talking to themselves or wondering out loud, what should I be doing or why is this thing not working? I am able to interpret. And so when I realized that that was actually the skill that got me to this executive position, it wasn't how hard I worked or how great my presentations were. Like, sure, those were all parts of it, but it was the particular skill that I had to be able to listen, interpret, and help people to move past their roadblock.
hmm.
That to me then became the next set of clarity, the one that I'm currently on, which is I want to share that. And specifically, I want to share that with women. Specifically, I want to share that with women leaders, right? Because we have a harder road. I am often in rooms with 40 other men and maybe one other woman, and that's
Yeah.
the HR person, right? And
Yeah.
she is an absolute angel. No, no tea on her. But it's a very traditional female role, right? So being in this sea of what I call the blue shirt mafia with all of my gray haired white male colleagues and the wonderful HR angel and myself. I'm like, there is so much more space for women. And the way that I see my team members growing and desiring different types of leadership and a different type of conversation and a more authentic engagement with their leadership, and less corporate jargon, right? That has created clarity for me in my purpose to help bring tools for women to be more successful and to feel more comfortable in those roles and to not feel like you have to specifically achieve something in order to be valuable that you already are there
That's a big
100%.
one. Yeah, that's a big one. So what do you say to the person that's listening that isn't working with someone like you,
Mhm.
maybe won't be able to, but they sort of are starting to feel the same things, right? They're feeling like there's something missing. They've done all the things too and did the check, 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 but they're not quite there. I mean, what is something you can tell them or advise them to do that would help them start figuring out what that thing is for them to get that clarity for them?
So I say be a toddler, because when I think about toddlers,
Yeah.
love the little angel humans. They ask why so many times, right, that we go insane. But we stop doing that as adults because we find it annoying in kids, right? And so we often take it for face value. We believe all of our thoughts. We think that if we write a perfect smart goal, because we've been told that all of our goals have to be smart now, so we have a perfect smart goal. It's perfectly well written. If we can achieve that, then we have clarity. But we haven't asked ourselves why. Why are those goals important? Right. And so the first tool that I bring to anybody is just ask yourself why you want a certain thing until you can't ask anymore. Because oftentimes that is going to be at the heart of what you're actually working for. And let me like make that more specific. So say I'm working with somebody and they said, I want to work toward a raise, or specifically, I want to be a director, is what a woman had told me, right? I want to be a director. Okay, why? Well, because I see these other people get promoted over me and they have a director title. And if I was a director, then I would be taken seriously. Okay. Why do you feel like you need to have that title in order to be taken seriously? Well, I really would like to have the raise and like the having a title goes with authority. Well, why don't you feel like you have authority? Right. And so like asking those questions and continuing to dig down, maybe it stems from I don't feel like I'm listened to, or I was passed over for a project and then I saw it fail and I had better ideas, right? So getting down to the like, oh, that's why I want this thing. It's not actually about the director title. Or maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's about the money, right? Maybe it's that you want the raise. And well, why do you want the raise? Because I want to be able to take care of my family. Well, what aren't you being able to do? Well, I can't take them on vacation and I want to be able to have my children see the world. Why is that important to you? Right? Because I didn't get to do that as a child and I want to engage in culture. Okay, so engaging in culture, how could you do that even if you don't get the raise, right? Like, how can we start these little things? Is it Duolingo? Is it watching documentaries together and fantasizing and building a trip and starting to save money? So we can do all these things without any coaching
Yeah,
programs,
yeah, yeah.
right? But sometimes it just helps to hear it from somebody
100%,
else.
100%. And I think sometimes, especially once we get to the middle age and identity shifts start to occur, whether that's from job loss or shifting, or children are grown and leaving, or relationship status changes. I think one of the things is that it's not always even the why, because sometimes people can't name the thing. Like they don't even know the thing they want to be able to then drill down on the why. I think a lot of times you even have to step back before that so that you can help them figure out what is the thing that they want.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's work too, to try to figure that out.
And giving yourself time to sit with it and recognize that you don't know it, because even that's scary.
Yeah.
Right? If we think about our 20s and then our 30s and our 20s, we're like, oh, by the time I'm 40, I will have X, Y, Z, A, B, C things. And then in your 30s, I hear my lovely late 20s friends be like, I can't wait till I'm turned 30 because then people will finally take me serious in my career, right? Like the number one thing I hear from women in business that are in their late 20s is that when they hit 30, and I felt that too.
Yeah.
And then now my friends in their 40s or 50s are like, oh my gosh, this is the best time of my life because I see all the paths and how they got me to where I am.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm behooven to those anymore, right? Like I checked those boxes that society tells me I need to check.
Yeah.
And now I get to find my own why, right? And that's work too, right? We might not even recognize it because we have been on this path that society has created for us, the media has created for us, our brains, our families, our Cinderella has told us that, we grow up, we go to college, and then we meet a beau, and then maybe we have kids, or maybe we don't have kids, but if we don't have kids, then definitely we get a job, and then we're going to climb the ladder. And then in your 40s, you're like, okay, I did those things. Now I
Now
want to
what?
start doing something that matters to me, right?
Yes.
I never got to
Yes.
ask myself what mattered to me before.
100%. Yes. I think that's what leads most people to these kinds of conversations, because they're doing that work, trying to figure that out. And I think one of the things you also talk about and focus on is that being busy isn't making progress necessarily. So getting out of our heads, getting the awareness, but then taking the action. But it can't just be any action, because being busy, as we all know, we can say we're busy till, I don't know, the sun goes down, but it doesn't mean we're going towards the right thing. So as somebody who, I mean, you are leading at the executive level, you have a co-owned yoga studio, you have your clarity coaching business. Have you ever found yourself sort of confused by motion versus momentum? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
all the time. And I actually have it written on a sticky note on my computer right now. Busyness is not a strategy. Just like we say, hope is not a
Yeah.
strategy, right? Busyness is not business. And I talk to my teams about this a lot too, because it feels like, I think in maybe the early 2000s, we started this like, we're going to hustle and grind, right? Like, and this is like
Yeah.
so amazing that we're all going to essentially work ourselves to the bone, right? Like we're going to work our full-time job, but then we're also going to hustle and grind and do these other things. And
100%.
like when we think about the etymology of like grind, it means we're like physically breaking down until
Yeah.
death. Why is
Friction.
that a good thing?
Yeah.
Like we are literally killing ourselves, and we're fantasizing about these things. And so having to take a step out of that, I was like, why are we doing this? It's because we have put so much value on being busy, and that has become like an award, right? The first thing that, and I get caught up in it too. The
Yeah.
first thing people say, like, how was your weekend? Oh, it was really busy.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. What did you do that was of value to you? Like what brought you joy? And so when I look at my calendar, when I set my week up, I actually have a practice with my best friend who lives in a different state. And every Monday I start three things that we're doing this week and three things that we're manifesting. And so it forces me every week at the beginning of the week to think about what the most important things are across my week, across all three of my businesses, right? Across my executive business, across the studio, across Clarity with Crystal, and at home personally for myself,
Yeah.
right? And just pick three because it used to be, especially as an overachiever, as a perfectionist, like you want to get the whole to-do list, but that whole to-do list is never ending, right? Like you will
Yeah.
never get there because there's always something else to do. So then you are just going to break yourself down. You're just going to grind yourself down. But if I can say like, hey, I made really good progress on these three things and they were the most important things for the week, that's a win. And sometimes I'm like, I got all three of the things done and I'm going to give myself a bonus thing, right? Like I'll do a number four. And I love doing it. We have a shared note and I can see what she's doing and send her like, hey, good job. Or, hey, I see that you didn't get your stuff done. Are you have like, what's going on with your week? It sounds like it was kind of stressful. Do you want to talk about it? And just like also offers community and
Yeah.
perspective. Um,
Accountability partners.
yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. How do you personally prioritize which three you're going to pick every week?
So I look at when I sit down and I do this on Monday morning, I look at my calendar for the whole week and I have one calendar to roll them all because if it's all not in the same place, like nothing exists,
Forget
right?
it. Yeah.
It is a wild rainbow bright situation, color coded, right? Like I know the color code and nobody else has any idea what's going on, but I'm like, okay, this is this business, this is my personal stuff, this is what I'm taking care of my mom, right? Because now we're also taking care of our parents.
Yes.
And this is where I get to have fun. And so I look at the whole week. And then I also look at my to do list that I have. And I say, if I can do nothing else, if nothing else happens this week, one, are there critical priorities that will like physically fall and break? Something will go wrong, or I will not be prepared for a particular meeting, a presentation, whatever. Like if those maybe have to go
Yeah.
on the list,
Yeah.
right? Number two, is there something that I've been avoiding for a really long time?
That's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, because those are the things.
Because, yeah.
Yeah, right. Because it's always on the to-do list because we never to do it.
Yes.
So if I notice a pattern, like, oh, I've been avoiding that one, it's moved week to week, a couple different weeks, or for some of them, it was like I wanted to tune up my bike. Like that has nothing to do with the goal that's living in my head, but I haven't done it for a year, and I've been wanting to do it, so it's taking up mental space,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes that goes on it because it's been on my mind, and I just want to get it taken care of. It could be like, I need to get an oil change this week, right? Maybe not the most important thing that's going to move my career forward, but it's going to allow me to continue to like exist in my life.
Yeah.
And so every week, like that is the process that I do particularly. It's taken me a while to kind of get into this groove, but I find it very successful for my personal organization. I've tried lots of different tactics, and I know some of my friends use their note tasks, and some people use to-do lists, and some people use reminders, and some people are magic and have it all in their head.
Yeah.
That was me in my 20s and is no longer a thing. Um,
I
but I,
like I like
yeah,
the three because
yeah,
what I like about it especially is you having named some of them. I think it's a good reminder to folks that it doesn't have to be these three big, crazy, lofty goals. They're just three things that need to get done and that you're going to give some priority focus. And that's it, period. Don't make it more than that. So I think that's important so that we're not always thinking we have to come up with these big fancy things every week. It's not necessary.
right. I mean, no one's gonna take over the world in a week,
Right.
right? Like we're
Right.
not going to achieve all of our dreams in a week, but we can feel good about the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And at work, I tell my team this all the time, every day, because as a leader, as an executive, we don't have like a clear to-do list. We're not like a clear task owner, right? It becomes harder and harder to know if like you're doing a good job and if people are happy and if you're contributing well. And so I tell my team every day, if I have helped one person, whether that is to get a little bit more clarity in what they're doing, to help them complete a task, to escalate a situation or make a decision that they were struggling with. I don't care if it's like teaching them yesterday I taught somebody how to use ChatGPT for like a way to make their life easier with the thing that they were doing. Um, if I've done one thing that day, then I have been successful in my job that day,
Mm,
because it can be so easy to fall into the trap of all the things that you didn't do, all the things that,
yeah.
all the failures, all the lack of success. But I think I probably started that maybe even 5 or 6 years ago, where I was just like, okay, that's my one thing. And so
Yeah.
it's a kind of a running joke now. If something silly happens, right? If I'm like, oh, I like, people are like, oh, I like your shirt, right? And I'll send them the link for it. I'm like, there's my one thing, right? Like, there's my one thing. But my team members know it too, and they're like, oh, there's your one thing. So that's another piece, is that success and grinding aren't necessarily valuable if you're not actually helping yourself or somebody else.
I love that. And it really resonates with me because when I started this, and I still say it, is if I could just help or touch or open someone's mind, one person with each episode, then it's worth it to me because that's of service to somebody. And I think it's also a shift for folks like us, recovering perfectionists, overthinkers, all the things, to be able to sort of bring that down to a level that makes sense and not just get so in our heads about it and so like caught up in trying to make it be everything to everyone that it just it loses what it's meant to be and the gift that it is. So I really appreciate you saying that because I think one thing is enough. One thing
Yeah,
is matters. So an important
right.
lesson. I did want to ask you about overthinking. You alluded to it and I just said it. So, those behaviors of perfectionism and overachieving very often come with overthinking. And so, I know that's one of the things that I've had to work on a lot. So, how has that showed up for you and what have you done to try to eliminate some of that?
I never, I hate saying never, I did not realize how much of an overthinker I was until maybe like the last few years, because my pattern of overthinking was like repetitive thoughts, but then also talking to a bunch of different people to try to sort my thoughts out, even though at the end I was always like arguing my point, or like getting to the same thing, right? I was
Yeah.
like trying to convince them as to why my thought was valuable, even though I was bringing it to them. It was funny. And now I know that that's my tell, is if I'm really stressed out, then I'll start to do it, right? I'll start to kind of socialize my idea and want them to like be like, yes, Crystal, that's a great idea. You should do that. And while that's valuable sometimes to really get good at to like brainstorm, when you're an executive and you need to make a quick decision, it's not valuable, right? It
Hmm.
wastes time, and the outcomes often aren't that different. So the one thing that has helped me a ton, I heard from Brene Brown, who is like my personal mentor. Have I never met her in my life, but like
She's your best
absolute
friend.
goddess, like queen, right? Like
Yeah.
good Lord, she's amazing. And she has this like series of library talks that she did way
Hmm.
back in the day. It's on Hoopla. It's free. You can listen to it. And in that, I believe it's in that, and then also in The Gifts of Imperfection, she talks about how she studied a bunch of people who were calm, because she was also an overthinker and she was not a calm person, and she would kind of freak out pretty easily. And so she wanted to know like what the secret was. Like, did they have a specific gene type? Did they all have, Italian parents, or like whatever it was? So she studied all these people. And what she found was that the thing that they had in common was that they kind of took these 4 steps. And I have these 4 steps memorized now. I used to have it as a different post-it note on my computer, that the first thing they did when they were presented with something that was causing them to spin a little bit. So maybe they overheard a part of a conversation that made them uncomfortable and assumed it was about them. Maybe they got bad news. Maybe they had to make a decision and didn't know how to handle it. The first thing is to take a breath, right? To like physically slow yourself down by taking a breath. The second action is to ask yourself if you have all of the information that you need.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes, like in that split second when you're being asked to make a decision, or when you overhear somebody and you assume they're talking about you, or you assume that it's a negative thing, we then fill in the blanks. We fill in the
Yeah.
blanks with our experience, right? So, do you actually have facts to back that up? And if not, then the next step is ask enough questions until you feel like you have all the data. And the last question that you always have to ask yourself is, will overthinking, will freaking out, will exploding in this moment actually help the situation?
Mm,
Because the answer is always no, right? The answer is
always.
always no. It's never going to make that situation better. It's only going to prolong your anxiety, prolong your nervousness about yourself, your doubt of your answer, right? Because when you're starting to overthink, you have the answer. You're just telling yourself why you're wrong over and over and over, trying to come up with a different solution that you're coming back to the same thing, right? So you're degrading your own authority in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's not valuable. And so that is the tool that I teach and I try to remember myself is that, okay, ask more questions.
Yeah.
Freaking out is not going to be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a great way to ground yourself. And that is one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So, a lot of folks that are in this sort of, I'll say, transitional phase, or just something's changing, right? It doesn't have to be this big transformation, but something's changing with them and they're shifting. It can be unnerving, unsettling, scary, all the things really, because you're not necessarily sure of where you're going, how to do it, what steps to take, all the things. The path might not be super clear. So how do you help someone you're working with stay grounded in that transition that they're trying to work through?
Three things come to mind specifically about helping. First of all, is always in breath work, right?
Mm,
Like allowing time to be aware of the breath that's happening in the body because a lot of us don't understand how important having control of and like deepening your breath is to your actual neurological function. So I talk about that a lot about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems and how deepening the breath and creating a lower belly breath and slowing it down actually helps the brain to then deal with the other things.
yeah.
Because often we're only breathing really in the top third quadrant of our chest at any given time, especially when we're in stress. So that's one. Number two is I try to reframe it as, is anyone actually going to die? Right. And it
Yeah.
sounds silly, but like I tell my team this a lot. We are not working in the ER,
Right.
right?
Right, right, right.
We are building software, right? And so like if this thing happens, is someone actually going to pay, right? Like just to reframe the size and scope of
Yeah.
what it is that we're trying to figure out. And then the third thing is what do you want to do? Right. Because a lot of times, if we can reframe and ask people what it is that they're feeling in their bodies, what it is that their intuition is telling them, we are attuned in some cases to ignore that, to ignore our inner knowing, to ignore the immediate answer that we have, assume it's wrong, or just like, say, no, 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 we're going to do something else. But if we can come into our bodies and ask ourselves, like, what would I do if nothing else, if nobody else had any say in this and I had to make a decision, could I live with this?
Mm,
Is often a tactic I will take after the breath work, right? Because we can't make those good decisions when we are heightened and anxious. So taking time to settle in, reframing that we're not in a life and death situation, most likely, though, of course, there are doctors and ER nurses and whatnot that absolutely are. But if you're not in that situation,
right.
then let's ground it and kind of listen to your inner knowing because people are capable. They're very smart. We just often don't give ourselves enough credit for it.
Yeah, I think all that's true. I do think that sometimes we've lost touch with our inner knowing and our intuition and listening to ourselves. We get so out of practice that we sometimes have to work with folks to get that back, to get in touch with themselves, get in touch with their body, get in touch with their intuition. But I agree with everything you said after that. I think it makes sense if they, just slow down and ask those questions. That is really grounding. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And that's not to say that any of this is simple or easy, right? Like
What
it's, that's why I've been in
100%.
therapy for, whatever, 27 years. But yeah,
Peeling the
it's,
onion,
it's
peeling the
a, it's a
onion.
work in progress.
It's just a work in progress, one layer at a time. I agree with that. I'm curious what you would tell your younger self if you could look back, because you've come a long way. And I just felt I felt you just shift a little bit. So what would you tell young Crystal who's just running to survive, really.
You know, maybe nothing to do with overachievement or perfectionism. The thing that I would tell little Crystal is it's okay to be big and to take up space, right?
Mm,
And that's going to serve you because I struggled with weight my entire life. And from the time I was 6 years old, an adult in my life told me that I was too big. And I just always believed that and let that dictate a lot of what I thought I was capable of
hmm
and always was working to be smaller in many regards, not just physically, right? And to tell her it's okay to take up space and that big is not bad would probably be the one thing I would tell her if I could only say one thing.
I love that. And I know the listeners will really relate to that because many of us have been on a wellness journey and have had some of the same struggles. And there's a lot of work that goes in there to unwind all that from years and years of thinking those things. Is there anything that jumps out at you that really changed? Obviously, you've done 27 years of work with therapy, but anything in particular jump out that shifted your relationship with yourself, with your body?
I think the one thing that sticks out the most in this moment for me, so I had weight loss surgery in 2018 and thought that that was going to sort of be the end all
It's going
be
to
all,
change
right?
everything. I'm going to be
Right,
thin.
right. The panacea
Yeah.
of everything. I had been on yo diets literally, I mean, 6 years old, right? Like just to think about that is absolutely terrible. And tried everything under the sun. So I said, okay, like this is the panacea. This is the thing that's going to solve it. And I was running and I had lost 120 pounds and then COVID hit. And at the same time that COVID hit, my knee blew out. I have a genetic condition that my cartilage is softening, so I can't run. So I was no longer able to run. And I had a pretty traumatic experience that was back at my childhood home weeks before we were in lockdown. And so all these things were happening at the same time. And I just started eating again,
hmm
right? I lost all of the skills. And of course, in COVID, maybe we were also drinking a little bit more than we should have been. And I lost all the coping skills and I was gaining and gaining weight back. And so what I had to do was kind of sit with the fact that I needed to value more the things that I could do in my life rather than the size that I was.
hmm
And that, when I got to that moment, which was part of my like yoga, it was really part of my yoga journey, was the thing that has changed the most. And honestly, shout out to GLP-1s because that also has helped with the food noise for me. Just being real, right? Like this was not a journey I did by myself. And there's a one specific thing that my dog broke my full length mirror while I was in yoga teacher training. And I've always had a full length mirror, like forever, right? Who doesn't? And my dog's tail was wagging and it shattered. And I had been learning about nonviolence and thinking really about the idea of the violence that we do in our minds and realized that I was using that mirror not to look at myself and just objectively see my body, but to look at myself and judge myself and
Yeah.
find things that were wrong,
Mm,
to actively seek it, right? That
yeah.
that was what that tool was. And so I made an agreement that I was not going to buy myself another full-length mirror until I was ready to not look in and tell myself what was wrong. And I have one now, kind of by happenstance. We built a house and they had an extra one in here from the bathroom, so now I have one. But I never bought one again. But now I can look into it, and I feel good about it. I feel good
Wow.
about what I see. But it took. I mean, that was also during COVID, so 4, 5, 6 years.
That's a great add to the story because I think a lot of people can relate to that and have similar experiences. And it takes a lot of work. And I think back to what we said at the beginning, it's an evolution. And I just think you're not done. It's never done. I'm convinced I get the GLP-1s and a lot of people are taking them, but I'm convinced even with them, I just think the work it'll always be there. I just think it'll always be there. It always, it's something that will, people that have struggled will always probably have to watch it for the rest of their lives. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing that it helps me with personally is just the quieting of the noise so that I can then have time to process my own thoughts,
Yeah.
right? But you're right, like then I still have to process them
Yeah.
and I still have to make choices and I still have to move my
Yeah.
body.
All the things, all the things. Well, I love to wrap with the same question that I ask everybody else, and that's if our listener can only take away one thing, what would you want it to be?
I think it's truly just the power of one breath, the power of wherever you are in your day. If you're in your car, if you're in a meeting that's going poorly, if your kids are yelling at you, breathing in deeply through the nose, filling your belly, and just allowing yourself to be present in that moment. It's a tool that is free and available to us at any time. And I think we forget about it. So that
Yeah.
would be the one thing.
We definitely do forget about it. Well, thank you. This has been fabulous conversation. Where are you most active? Where would you like to send people to look for you?
Yes. So I am preparing to launch my website in like 2 weeks, which will be clarity-with-crystal.com. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is the YouTube and then clarity-with-crystal. So would love to engage with you online. And yes, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you for having me today.
You are very welcome. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.